Morning, YouTube folks. Just about getting started here. I need to tweet out the link to this. I guess it's not set up yet. I guess if I click off the window, it doesn't keep going. That's weird. I went over to Twitter to kind of get that started while this YouTube got going and it stopped on me.
Yeah.
There's the link for that. Yes. Good morning, YouTube folks, for a second time. I'm tweeting this out, folks, on YouTube. So the link to this where you are on YouTube so we can get rolling here. All right. And let's hit record. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot Podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Thursday, August the 29th, a little after 8:30 a.m. Central Time, a little early today. Scott's got to get on the road heading north to Minneapolis for tonight's Minnesota North Carolina game. I know a lot of you folks will watch that. Scott, if you guys have missed this announcement at some point during this podcast, Scott is doing or covering more national and Big Ten stories this year. Still be doing Iowa, but like tonight is one of those examples of you doing something else, and then you'll be back on Saturday to cover Iowa.
Yeah, that's my gig now. It's kind of a Big Ten and Iowa, not just Iowa. So, but that's good. I mean, I get kind of the best of both worlds. I look at it this week, especially. Not writing as much during the week about Iowa. I wrote today about PJ Fleck and what some people may consider as quirkiness, and
Why don't you give us a synopsis of that? I encourage people to read it, but I know he's one of those guys that there's a perception about, and I wonder how much that perception is reality from what you were able to decipher.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody thinks he's quirky, but I think when people misinterpret what he does as fake, that's what's wrong because he is authentic. Now, he's authentic in a way that makes some people uncomfortable because he is type A to the 10th degree. I
Yeah.
mean, just something that you really struggle with, because it's just constant, bah, 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 like the Energizer Bunny. And at times it's like, man, this is too much for me, which is what, and he did say, he goes, I'm not for everybody. And that's true. And in recruiting, you see that all the time that there's, but I tell you what, the players that believe in him are completely 100% sold in him. And there are some good qualities that I obviously don't get talked about a lot that I did try to convey. And I think that to me, the academic component is the one that really caught my eye. And that is that he requires all of his players to wear collared shirts, to sit in the first two rows of every class, to be there early, to put away their phones, to not wear earrings or hats. And part of it is he said, look, it's that professor's Super Bowl. You want people to show up to your game ready to go. You better be ready for them. And I talked to like Mo Ibrahim, former running back, great running back, and he's like, I saw it pay off for me. I was kind of on that C plus borderline, but I'm sitting in front, I'm paying attention, I ask questions, and ultimately, and it helped me get to have a little bit better grade. Get up to the B line and things like that. And they, and last year they were the team, the first team in with a 5-7 record. Because of the, they had the highest APR. So I felt like that was really interesting. He's now the third longest tenured coach in the Big Ten. And I don't think anybody thought that he'd be around for more than 4 or 5 years. He probably, he had his 11-win season. Then it was like, all right, now he's gone. And he's had other schools in the Big Ten, UCLA, sniff around him, wanting him. But, he built a new house and he planned it for 2 years in advance. And there's just, and then of course he has no bones, no problem picking spats with his neighbors, as we all
Yeah,
know.
I don't want to give away all the Iowa
Yeah.
stuff because I want people to read your story, but any nuggets you want to share?
Yeah. Let's go with the one with Floyd last year. And that was, he takes the trophies home and
To
then
his house.
to his house after games. And then, so he had to Floyd into his house and everything like that. But he made sure that one of his neighbors in the neighborhood is a huge Iowa fan, and he always flies. He says proudly flies the Iowa flag, and he wanted to make sure that he saw Floyd, so he propped him up in his car, so the guy's Ring camera would catch Floyd going to PJ Fleck's house and stuff. So
That's good.
yeah. So and then there's some, the stuff about sleeping with the axe. I'll save that for the story, but
Okay.
that's worth checking out. And the cigars in the locker room last year, that's worth
Yeah.
checking out too. So
Yeah,
anyway,
give that a read. It's on the Athletic this morning. I think about PJ Scott, and I think it ties into what you were talking about. Is he genuine, or is he fake? And I think about the wave and his kind of embrace of that, and having his team wave. I think they were the first one opposing team to do it. And I know there was some, the Iowa fans that don't like him were like, it's all show. But if you know his history, you know that was important to him. And that's kind of because I see it from through the Iowa lens. I see
yeah,
PJ Fleck mostly. You have another view, but that's kind of how I see him. When people say he's fake, I think about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I recognized right away. And that at the end of the first quarter, his whole team went out to the field, turned around and waved. And it's really important to him because, his son died 6 hours after he was born with a heart issue in Philadelphia. It's just, no matter who you are and what the rivalry says, that's awful. And that lives with you. And that's where row the boat mantra kind of came from, was his, when he was there, and he was at Rutgers at the time working for Greg Schiano, and that was only a year removed from when Eric LeGrand broke his neck and was paralyzed. And their mantra was keep chopping, and it's chop, and that's what Schiano was always kept there. And he saw how that worked, how that helped people get through, and he wanted to do something like that for his son Colton, who passed. And so he kind of came up with this slogan, and obviously people make fun of it, and it probably is, it's understandable because the whole program is wrapped in oars and everything like that.
And when you're in a boat there, and things don't go well,
Yeah,
it's easy to just make the sinking joke.
yeah,
The boat is sinking, so
yeah,
it's gotten some inherent pitfalls.
for sure. I think I remember the first one was actually that same game that you're talking about, when PJ turned around, that Noah Fant caught a long touchdown pass, and then what did he do in the end zone?
Yeah,
start rowing. So that to me is, that's it's all fair when it comes to that. But I think that when you do analyze, okay, this does mean something to him. And there's on his wall, he has 6 rejection letters from being a grad assistant. He said he had sent out like 100. One of the 6 was from Kirk Ferentz, but he at least wrote him, he wrote him a letter and signed it and everything. So
that's on brand for Kirk. He likes to handwrite letters. He's still
yeah.
one of those people that does that, which kind of reveals his age.
Yeah, it reveals his age, but also his character.
Yes, I agreed.
Yeah,
both.
Because I've gotten letters from him, and it's just the way he is. But and then another one's from Mac Brown, his opponent tonight. So it's just, and he does some of the same things. I mean, one thing that, as with stories like this, and I know this is the Hawkeye, not the Gopher.
We're tying Iowa into it, and they play in a few weeks. So
yeah. But they send oars to people, that are, whether dealing with cancer or stuff like that. One that came to mind, and I don't think this made the story, unfortunately, but remember a handful of years ago when that Iowa State golfer was murdered, the honor court. He sent Jamie Pollard an oar just saying, hey, we're all with you. And I think those are the things that don't get brought up very often, and those are the things that make people real. Now he's not, in his personal life, he's had issues and things that I think people would really be up in arms with, divorce, alleged infidelities, I guess, from back then. But I think overall what we've seen from him is a pretty high quality of work for Minnesota. They've had two 10-win seasons since 1905. and he has one of them. They've won, they've 3 out of their last 5 years or something. They've won at least 9 games. For Minnesota, that's really good. So, but the new look Big Ten is going to attest to that for them more than like Iowa in my eyes. So I think this is it's a fascinating look at somebody who's, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but somebody who's certainly a personality in the sport.
As somebody like you who's covered the team for a long time, Iowa, that is, and the Big Ten, I appreciate PJ for one simple fact. He's made this rivalry fun again. There's been some years where it was like, eh.
Yeah.
But now this is a game people look forward to. Iowa fans don't like him. Minnesota hates Iowa, and all's good, And I kind of missed that with Illinois a little bit.
Right.
And Illinois rivalry is nowhere near Floyd. I mean, Floyd is it when it comes to Iowa for me, rivalry wise, and it's healthy. It's a healthy rivalry right now, and it's just from take the pig, leave the timeouts, to smoking the cigars, to it's not a fair catch. It's just we're getting a lot of storylines and memories now that are great for rivalries that last the test of time, right? When we in 20 years, we'll think back to that. Take the timeouts, leave the pig, and not a fair. These are memories, right? As a Hawkeye fan, as a Minnesota fan, and that's good for this rivalry, which is so historic.
Exactly, it's the 4th most played rivalry in Big Ten history. And and you look back, I mean, as you said, Iowa has 4 great rivalries to me, and 3 of them are historic, and Nebraska is growing and it's going to reach that same, and so if there's 4 traveling trophies, but if they were to, have a moratorium on trophies and say, we're going to have to peel some back, I don't think anybody would have a problem with 3 of them going away. The bowl is kind of neat, but it's a symbol of victory, but that's, the Wisconsin-Iowa rivalry stands on its own. Nebraska-Iowa, the heroes concept is fantastic, but the actual trophy is just, again, a trinket of victory. And the Cy-Hawk trophy, let's face it, we've had to deal with a couple of those. So I mean, again, symbol of victory, but Floyd is special. Floyd is different, and Iowa, Minnesota is different. And when you look back in the history of why Floyd came about, and the moments since then, some of the things, I mean, PJ didn't know this, and I was talking to him about it, was, the 1960 game was Iowa was number 1 and Minnesota was 2 in one poll and 3 in the other. That was the first ranked game between 2 black quarterbacks in major college football history. Both had starting quarterbacks who were African-American. Sandy Stevens in Minnesota, Wilburn Hollis, who just died a year within last year.
Rest in peace, Wilburn. Right. Good guy. I've talked to him. Have you talked to him?
Yeah, I have.
That was nice. It's good to know that we were able to speak to people like that, through the years, Randy Duncan, all the guys that were that big part. You did a big thing on Alex Karras. That 50s, 60s time for Iowa was special. And that almost seems like back then, that rivalry between Iowa and Minnesota, this may be the closest since then, just in terms of both teams being on equal footing. The 80s were what they were too, but this is I'm thinking more of just the Kirk Ferentz block of time. This to me is the best part of the Iowa Minnesota rivalry during his time.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and you look at like the 70s, the 60s and 70s for Iowa were a wasteland, right. And Minnesota wasn't a whole lot better either. I don't know. They may have, I think they won, in 67, they tied for the Big Ten title, but they didn't go to a bowl game either for about that long. And then Iowa got really good. Minnesota stayed stagnant. There were some moments that were fascinating. I mean, Hayden coming in with his, his hat and everything. I mean, there was always some things with Minnesota, but really, as you said, when you have interesting figures on both sides, certainly on Minnesota's side, it stokes the flames. I mean, it's kind of in some ways, Fran does the opposite. For fans hate him on the opposite side. He's not a wallflower. He's just a guy. He's a guy that people can get dislike, and that breeds some really interesting matchups. And whether it's again. In 19, when Minnesota was in the top 10 and undefeated and came to Iowa and Iowa beat them, and then 20 It's when Kirk just turns around, he's like, "You guys have been complaining about me not using my timeouts. I figured I'd leave the timeouts here and take Floyd with us." And and just they've had some great games. I mean, you can't just last year's, of course, was at the top of the list of memorable moments, but
I
there's
think the one year was the year Brian lost it in the press box, wasn't it?
And
that was a Minnesota game.
That was the Minnesota game too. That was 17.
I mean, it seems like there's always something, which is good. That's a rivalry when you have just those extra side stories, sidebars.
And I would say Iowa has that with Minnesota in football and Illinois in basketball.
Yeah.
It's just constant something going on.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I'm gonna go check out the mighty Gophers tonight against the Tar Heels in the first kind of big crossover non-conference game among Power Fives and
Power Four.
Power Four, sorry. I don't. Yeah.
Has that taken yet? Has Power Four taken, or were people still using Power Five?
I accidentally used Power Five there. We use Power Four.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I don't know. I don't write enough about it to know if that's been completely adopted.
I try to write power conferences.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach.
But still, it's it's a challenge. I mean,
whatever. Who knows? Next year, it could be Power 3 in a few years.
How many years did people call it BCS conferences? Before they changed. But that's exciting. And then I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know if you're going to go to Fry Fest. I probably won't.
No, I've got high school football tomorrow, so I'm going to take a little time to exhale tomorrow after coming back from the Johnston volleyball quad tonight, where my daughter plays City High. So Johnston, it's at Johnston tonight. If you're in Central Iowa and want to check out some volleyball, Johnston, Iowa City High, Council Bluffs, Lincoln, and Marion. So interesting collection of schools in the quad.
Yeah,
but that's my afternoon today, and then tomorrow morning and during the day. I got to finish my Iowa preview today. I haven't even gotten to that yet. So, you know what? This is probably a good time. Let's slip the break in now, and then Scott and I can roll with some Iowa talk after it. Sounds like a good plan. Yeah. And that entails letting you guys know that support for this podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. We'll hear from a few more of our sponsors now. Scott and I will be back on the other side with Hawk Talk. Hang tight. And we're back on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com to let you know that switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights, we switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch, but what is not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Chad Birch right here in Iowa City can switch you over so you can start saving today. Chad and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Chad Birch, it's easy to switch and save. Just give him a call when you want the real deal. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. A couple new sponsors to the podcast. Black Angel Restaurant here in Iowa City. Go check that out if you're coming to town this year for football or whatever. Homecoming parade, all those things. It's right downtown. It's the corner of is that Governor and Iowa or Dodge and Iowa?
Governor in Iowa.
Governor in Iowa. Yeah. I always get those back.
Yeah.
Dodge goes out of town. Governor comes into town. So it's Governor and Iowa Avenue right on the corner there. It's changed different restaurants through the years, but that's Black Angel. If you know the Perez brothers in Iowa City, El Banditos, Perez Tacos, same owners, great food. Check it out.
I went there on Saturday.
Oh, right. We have an endorsement.
I do. My daughter is kind of into mythological type stories and stuff, and my wife was out of town. She went and saw the Aces and the Fever in Minneapolis last weekend. So my daughter and I on Saturday, we went out and checked out the Black Angel statue at the cemetery, and then decided to have kind of an early dinner at the Black Angel restaurant. It was fantastic. I had the tacos, and it's like, wow, okay, I haven't had one of these type of tacos in a long time. And I can't totally recommend it. I remember when the Augusta was there, and this was a while ago now, but the Black Angel is definitely worth checking out.
Midtown restaurant was there years and years ago, I think, and there was a bunch of other restaurants. Lou Henry's, I think, was there for a while. I don't know what happened to that, but it's a good spot, and parking is a bit of a challenge, but other than that, if you can get in there, the food is great. And then our other new sponsor is Godfather's Pizza in Silvis, Illinois. Everybody knows Godfather's, great pizza. Check them out if you're over there in Silvis, Illinois. Obviously, the John Deere Classics there, but a lot of other stuff goes on in the Quad Cities in that area. So check them out as well, and we appreciate them supporting the podcast. Scott and I talked about before recording that we're not going to deep dive into this Illinois State game. I'm kind of the belief, and I'll have a written preview, and everybody else will too, if you're that interested in finding out. Like, I guess the one thing to note is TJ Rubley's kid is the quarterback. That's kind of interesting. So, and he's somebody that Iowa offered. He's somebody who finished his high school career at West Des Moines Valley. So little interesting angle there, right?
Yeah, he was a guy that I know when he went to Kansas State, he moved from Colorado here because of the COVID situation, and then ended up at Kansas State and then transferred out. That I thought, that's the type of quarterback Iowa kind of needs to find in the portal. Somebody who's hungry, somebody who's, not going to cost a whole lot, and somebody who can, really, maybe you have a chance to grow with. I thought he would have fit that bill, but I'm looking forward to watching him play. I remember TJ Rubley back in the day in Davenport area, because I was a Burlington kid in the MAC, and he competed in the MAC. And so this is, I'm looking forward to that. And I think with Illinois State, just briefly, 6-5 team last year. Brock Spack's still the head coach. He's been there forever.
15 years, I think I heard. That's a long time.
And just kind of tying it all together this weekend, he was the defensive coordinator at Purdue in the 2000s when they really had a good defense.
Really good.
Yeah, I mean, they had
everybody talked about Tiller's offense, but his defense won a lot of games.
Yeah, they were a quality program in the 2000s under Joe Tiller. And really you could say that they kind of crossed paths with Iowa in that way. That they were riding pretty high. They were about the third or fourth best program in the Big Ten. Then Iowa kind of passed them a little bit, but they had some great games. Well, his defensive coordinator was Brock Spack there. And 2008 game, that's when the Sean Green laid out Frank Duong and on one of his touchdown runs. That's getting a lot of play right now online. Yeah. And, because Sean Green's going in the Hall of Fame this weekend.
Yes, congrats to all the Hawkeye student athletes that are going into the Hall.
Yeah, it's a pretty good class for sure.
Yeah, very.
And then I remember talking to Brock Spack afterwards in the Purdue locker room or outside the Purdue locker room, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this guy's as good as it gets. This guy's the best in the country, no question." I'm like, how does he compare in the Big Ten? He's like, he's the best since Curtis Enos. And that's when Curtis was really good at Penn State, as we know. And
then Saquon came along.
Yeah, Saquon. I would say that there's been some better running backs, probably since both of them. Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley. I mean, they only had Stanford, so Christian McCaffrey will be, retroactively included. No, but still, at that point, it was like, wow. So Spack is a guy who's been there for a long time. They've competed at a pretty good level. He'll bring a team that's capable of playing hard. They're not going to lay down, and they're going to look for, they're going to try to win. They're not going to win, but they're gonna compete. But now it's on Iowa. What do we want to see, Rob? What do we think that Iowa's capable of? I think this game is totally about Iowa. It's sign the check, give it to them, and then what's this mean for Iowa?
Yeah, this is a feeling out game, I think. These openers against FCS teams, obviously, I forget who brought it up. Was it Deontay Craig the other day? Somebody brought up the South Dakota State game from a few years ago. So I'm sure they're hearing a lot about that in the building this week.
Yeah.
This is not South Dakota State level. But I think, it's how does the offensive line look? How does the depth on the defense, all the stuff we've been talking about all off season, but really this is about the quarterback, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah.
It really is. And once we recorded last week and then Kirk met, and obviously we didn't get a chance to talk about the suspension. We can touch on that a little bit. I have a theory on that, but or speculation and theory, but it's really about, and I wrote about this, I think Sunday night, is how Iowa handles this quarterback situation this year is going to go a long way in determining whether this team can reach its potential. And that is having the flexibility. All right, Cade your guy now. That doesn't mean he has to be the guy all season. Have some flexibility, have some evaluation, and figure out as the season goes on, because Sullivan can conceivably pass Cade. You can make an argument that he is a better fit for this offense. So and this is history in my head with Kirk, because that's who I'm talking to here more than anybody else. Not that he cares what I have to say, but just have that flexibility, man. If it's not working, make a change.
Right. And that's going to be that's another litmus test. That's another issue for Kirk Ferentz to go through. He has adapted over time. Now he had to adapt this year, and Tim Lester has brought in a different offense, and now he's got to make sure that they, now he can't he can't mess it up on Saturday because he won't be there. But now if it's 3rd and 2 at the 40, I don't know. You might see some weird stuff that maybe we won't see during the season. I'm just kidding, but I think with this, it's all about quarterback. It's all about, I think in this situation, Rob, I think with Cade McNamara, they've put so much equity as a program into Cade McNamara. I mean, they signed him as a free agent a year and a half ago. Let's call it what it is. It's a free agency, and he got hurt, and he's got one more year, and he's the leader of the offense, and and everything has been about Cade, so they're going to let Cade try to make this work. And our opportunity to see Cade was not real good. We saw it, we know it, we talked about it incessantly, probably over the last 3 to 4 weeks. Has he gotten better? Will he be good? Was it a product of that it was rust and he just wasn't playing well and maybe he was getting better? Was it a product of the offense, or is he just, hey, this guy's only played 8 games in the last 2 years and his ability have really shrunk? We'll know a lot of that on Saturday. Maybe not the whole picture, and I caution people that if he goes 10 or 21, do we throw him away, or is it just hey, there's some things out there, maybe the receivers run the wrong route or whatever. But I also think, like with you, I said this a couple of weeks ago that I thought Sullivan was the guy, and
I put Scott on the spot there too. And it was more of a, you going with your gut than saying that Sullivan would be the starter. And now, just to clarify that for some folks.
At that point, he had outplayed Cade McNamara, and the trajectory of him arriving in June is, important to remember right now, because without Kirk Ferentz there, and I don't think it's going to hinder them a lot, but I think that, and with a new coordinator, with new nomenclature, new verbiage.
Is Lester going to be upstairs Saturday, or is he? Okay, so he is going to be up there. I didn't know with Kirk being out if he would come down, but I guess.
No, because he could see the field, and that's how he wants to call.
No, I get it.
Stuff, and plus now you can go head to the headset. I think in some ways it's like at least the guy gives us can get the trains running on time and get us in the right protections, get us in the right plays, understands it a little bit better maybe than Brendan Sullivan does at this moment. And the hope is, of course, that he executes in the passing game to the point where it rewards that faith in him. But Brendan Sullivan's a smart guy. He does have a Northwestern degree, and poo-poo it all you want. That's pretty impactful. And so he's got 2 more years, and I'm sure he's catching up on a quicker pace. And as you said, Rob, I totally agree that his skill set suits this offense a lot better. And so if the trajectories are like this, how long before you catch up? I would give him to probably let's see what Cade does not only this week, but against Iowa State. And if you get to halftime and you're down and he's terrible, 5 of 14 or something like that, then maybe you might see. I think there's more faith in Brendan Sullivan than there was in, say, Deacon Hill or Alex Padilla or any of those other guys.
Yeah, my hope. Yeah, I agree with you, and my hope is that Kirk has come to the point is like, fuck it, this is it for me. I got a few more years, whatever it is. I relented on the defense. I let him, I was 4-3 all the way. I relented on that. Now we have flexibility. They're doing all kinds of stuff on defense. Every year you see some different wrinkle or different, schematic change or reaction to what other teams are doing. Just do that on offense. Just be flexible. Just put your players in the best position they can be to succeed. And that's part of that is the quarterback, right? We know Cade's not going to be able to do some of the things that Brendan's going to be able to do, particularly with his legs. So what are you calling for him to be successful? And then if you do go to Brendan, what position do you put him in to be successful? And that's the key. And it just seems like it's been so rigid on offense, Scott, for so many years. I just want it to just be a little bit more adaptive and evolve a little bit. That's all I ask for. It's pretty. I'm pretty a simple man, really.
You're a simple man.
Just like the defense has evolved, right? The defense that they were playing in 2005, they couldn't play in 2015, but they still played it for a while, and then they finally gave in.
Yeah, they gave in, and that was something that Phil and Seth were kind of pushing on, and not that Kirk was holding them back, because Kirk has told me before, even when he hired Norm, he didn't care if they ran a 3-4 or 4-3 or what their style was. Mm-hmm. It was just like run something and be consistent with it.
Yeah.
And of course they were, and they have been. They've been great, but there has been an uptick in that defense since 2018, since they made that change.
Yep.
And when you have Sebastian Castro, who, I keep doing these like all Ferentz teams, and when you start going with the defensive backs, even the last 2 years, you're like, damn, how am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
Because, Cooper DeJean's got to be in there. Castro is getting close to being in there. And then who do you take out? It's like, oh my God, it's like I'm taking out now, not only big, all Big Ten guys, but Big Ten defensive backs of the year,
Yeah.
So you're just in but anyway, I digress. But I think with the offense, how adaptive can they be? I think this is a much different offense schematically, passing route concepts, spacing on the field, what they do with the ball. I saw a lot of that even on Kids Day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't going to notice it because what they'll look at is, are they throwing the ball down the field? And how many times do they go 5 wide? Well, they didn't go 5 wide a lot last year. They just didn't complete any passes out of it,
Yeah,
and
there was a little disconnect there. The quarterback and the receivers were not up to the task, let's say.
Yeah, let's be kind on that one. And then likewise, you look at so this one, I mean, when you look at the spacing of the routes and how they're positioned, that's what I look at. And it is completely different. And when you look at the swing passes that they're incorporating, which I'm like, okay, that's great. This gets the ball in the playmaker's hands in space. And Iowa did a very poor job of that for the last several years of, whether it's Tyrone Tracy or Amir Smith-Marset or Charlie Jones, you had good players. You just didn't get the ball to them in a position where they could make plays when it was in their hands. And that's on the scheme. And because they are good players. Brandon Smith's a good player. hit him up with a fade route. I mean, God, he's making those same catches in the pros. Hit him up with a fade route once in a while. Twice a game. Let him make a play on the ball because he's a good player. And
that's another part of this, Scott. It's Kirk Ferentz's, and I don't want to put it all on him, but he's been the constant during this time when a lot of the similar complaints occur about the offense that have happened through the last quarter century. Just trust your players, right? It's the pull with Kirk of being risk averse to can I trust the players? He has a tendency to do that as guys get older and earn more trust. But sometimes you have to take a chance with some of the younger guys or some of the skill players. Give them a chance to make a play.
Yeah. Well, I think back, I sat down with Brian a couple years ago, had about a 6-hour film session with him. And we went in, he wanted me, what I wanted from him was I picked out all these games. And I said, I want to know what you were thinking, what your scheme was, what your plan was. And I want good and bad. So we went through Ohio State in 17. We went through USC in 19. What worked? Why did you do what you did? And I mean, the Ohio State scheme was really revealing. It's like they can't cover tight ends. That's obvious. So what we were doing in the first quarter was setting them up. So we would trade over. What's their coverage? Okay, that's exactly what we thought. Let's do it again. Okay, that's exactly what we thought. And then when they reached the second quarter, it's like we got them, and we knew exactly what was going to happen, and that's what happened. That's why tight ends scored 4 touchdowns or something like that day. USC, it was just because they were playing a really bad defense in part. That was part of it. But then Wisconsin in 18 comes to mind. It was a night game at Kinnick Stadium, and they're on the goal line twice, and they're in like 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, fullback, running back, and 1 wide receiver. And they would split out Noah Fant, and he'd have one-on-one coverage against a defensive back. I can't remember which one it was, but he's like 5'9", and Noah's like 6'5" and athletic. And I mean, it's soloed up. There's nobody, no safety cover, anything. You can run whatever route you want with Noah Fant. He's winning it, and they're scoring a touchdown. And they never threw to him. And I was asking Brian about that, and he's like, well, we just wanted to put that out there, to make them think. And I'm like, but they're not thinking about it. They're not moving a safety over there. They're thinking you're not going to do that. And then lo and behold is when they snuck. It was like the only sneak that didn't work with Nate Stanley on a 4th and 1. They get stopped. And then another one was a sweep to Ivory Kelly Martin, and he gets stuck for, like -3, and they have to kick field goal. And it's like that kind of risk averse, but that's not just Kirk. That was Brian. And it's like, you could call a slant there with Noah Fant. You could call a fade route in the back of the end zone. Heck, you could do just about anything. You can motion them in and then put them right there. It's an easy score. So trusting your players is something that I think Tim Lester will do a lot more of. I'm sure the Kirk's risk averse is going to come in to crunch time moments, but I think overall he's going to let Tim kind of take it. And that's going to be important because that's going to be the determining factor, Rob, along with execution at the quarterback play, as to whether this team is competing for a playoff spot or in that 7-4 range going into the finale. And then we're all starting to look ahead and going, all right, is it time for Kirk to step down?
Yes. And if you look at Saturday, I would caution people to not get too uptight if things look a little wonky on offense. Again, as we saw on Kids Day, you had a quarterback that just showed up in June at the beginning of the training camp, and you had a guy who barely has played in 2 years and had 2 season-ending knee surgeries the last 2 years playing. So let's give them some grace. And I know it's tough to be patient after what you've been through recent years. I get it. And I think that was the kick to the nuts on Kids Day. Was like, oh, it's bad again. And that was but let's get past that and let's just see how this offense does as the season goes on. There's going to be a learning curve. Tim Lester's going to have to learn how to play within the complementary football philosophy, what he can do. It's going to take a little bit of time. And So you should know this anyway, that Iowa's never a finished product at the end of August or the beginning of September. But this is a new offense with quarterbacks that are compromised in terms of experience within it. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think there is potential there. I have hope again. So again, going into the season with hope that we will see an offense that we can actually watch and not have to, it got to the point the last few years where it was like, I don't even want to watch this. It got uncomfortable. Like the Big Ten championship game last year, I'm like, they've got no chance.
Yeah.
They literally get behind. They've got no chance. Mm-hmm. And I just want to have a feeling that if Iowa's down 10 points going into the fourth quarter, that they can come back and win without having a defensive score. Cooper DeJean returning a punt, which isn't going to happen this year, but you know what I mean. Special teams, something freakish happened. Just give me an offense that's competent.
It's sad, but I got to the point on a few games last year, Rob, where I thought the only way they're going to score is on defense, is a big play on defense
or a return.
Special teams, in the Minnesota game, and even then they still got the ball at midfield with a minute and a half to go, against a defense that had one great player and the rest were so, and you should still be able to get in a field goal range, and they got 6 yards after halftime. I mean, it was just gross, and it will not be that bad. And I do think the scheme will help the running game. I think the running game can be very, very good this year. But I caution people both ways, and I know that's, I might as well be, like the end of Animal House, all is well, but one way or the other. But
the meme with the dog with the fire around.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Kevin Bacon, though, to me.
Stay calm.
All is well, at the end of the parade. But I think that's going to be the case on Saturday, that, they might have a 3 and out, and I wouldn't boo. They might actually have a couple, maybe a turnover, now if they score 20 points, you have every right to be concerned, but you also have a right to go, well, that was the first time out there. Let's see what they can do. Or conversely, if they score 45 points, because they did score 41 against Western Michigan last year.
Yeah.
If they score 45 points, don't say, man, this thing's rolling, in the right way.
Or keep Kirk away.
Yeah, right. Kirk, just stay. We don't want
stay home on Saturdays, man.
Yeah, we'll take Saturday.
Do some yard work.
Yeah, I'm
Clean
sure
the pool.
Yeah, listen to Dolph and Pat Angerer and exactly, clean the pool. he's Mary's pool boy now. But no, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, we were just talking about putting too much one way or the other into what we see on Saturday. It's an opening act. It really is, with a lot of variables and a lot of changes from last year that you just have to take into effect. And I know asking people to be patient again after what they've been through the last few years and watching the offense, and talking to some fans that were like, I felt like there was a uneasiness in the pit of my stomach when I knew Iowa's offense needed to do something for us to win a game.
Yeah.
And that's not, as a fan, that's not enjoyable. So from a fan's perspective, for them, I would like to see just, an offense that you can at least watch and have hope can do something. And that could, again, take a few weeks for us to get there. But I have, there are pieces around here that, you look at a Luke Lachey and his potential and on the next level and what he could be if he's healthy throughout this season. I think Addison Ostrenga is an incredible second tight end that would start on a lot of teams. So you're solid there. We didn't talk about Kamari Moulton yet and his ascension in a very deep running back room. I don't know if they could be healthier at that position, Scott. Receiver and quarterback really are the two. Can they take steps forward, and can the offensive line allow everybody else around them to do their job?
And that's the way the O-line wants it. And that they're in the best position they've been as a unit, I will say, since maybe 16. and when they won the Joe Moore Award, and they had a lot of mutts back then. I mean, when you look at Cole Croston was a walk-on, Boone Myers was a walk-on, Ike Bucker was a tight end when he came in.
Played quarterback in high school too.
Played quarterback in high school, came in as a tight end, and then ends up being an offensive lineman for quite a while. Just got cut the other day. But James Daniels and Sean Welsh were guys we knew about, that were legit. But when you look at this offensive line, it's easy to, they have 151 career starts. That's big time. They've got a left tackle now who's entering year 4. And before people say, well, they had Linderbaum and they had Wirfs and they had Jackson before. Yeah, but then they also had real deficiencies at other places. The guard play in 18, that's why they lost at Michigan. They could not block anybody inside. And Wirfs had a bad game, and Alec Jackson was hurt still. But anyway, I think that this is a complete line. They've got depth that's there, that's experienced, and now
the same thing should hold true there as it holds true at quarterback. If Bo Stevens isn't getting the job done, you put Nick DeYoung in, you know what I mean? Or if Logan Jones, it doesn't click for him and he's still, has some inconsistencies at center. I don't anticipate these things happening, but again, have the flexibility to put somebody in, same as quarterback, if it's not working.
Right.
Because you don't have time. There's urgency here, Scott. You can't waste this defense again.
Yeah.
You can't.
Exactly. And I know you're talking with, other people, I've been asked, is this a playoff or bust year? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think so.
And we've seen these years come up, Rob, and a lot of times they've slipped the other way. I mean, the first one, I think it was your first one when you were in this area in 97. They had that type of a team with Tim Dwight and Tavian Banks, and
started out off awesome. Looked like they were going to roll.
Yeah, and then they went to Ohio State, and Tavian had an ankle, and they lost. And then they lost some close games. And
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan, Northwestern, Wisconsin for the first time in 20 years they lost. And so they had all those games. 2010 was real similar to that. They're coming off a great season. Orange Bowl winning in year, and we expected them to be in that situation. Of course, when you look at their schedule, they played a lot of really good teams. Even in Arizona, for instance, had Nick Foles, a quarterback. So that said, this year the schedule aligns pretty good for them. They have a defense that should keep them in every game. They have an offensive line that they could use and press on. And that's really what you want. If you had your choice, you're going to get one or the other, an experienced offensive line or with an inconsistent passing game, or an inexperienced offensive line with some consistency up there. Largely, you're going to want the O-line because you can lean on it. You can bully your way into some wins. And so I think they're in good shape, and it's probably going to be good for them. Kind of like if you're running on the treadmill and you're using ankle weights, and then you take the ankle weights off, or you're boxing and you're boxing with.
Are you speaking from experience here on this?
Not anymore on the treadmill. But even if you're using like a donut on a baseball bat, and then you take the donut off, it's like, wow, this is easy. That's what it is, because now they're not going against Iowa's defense anymore.
Yeah.
But they're going to go against a 3-4, which is going to be helpful for them because they're going to be playing a 3-3-5 next week.
Yep.
But there's just so much to see and so much to check in on. I'm fascinated by it, Rob.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking finally to seeing some football. Flip on the other side of the ball real quick, Scott. We don't have to go deep dive here. As we talked about, this unit should be among the best in the country. And you really have to pick nits on that side of the ball to say, okay, this is a potential hot spot. And I don't think this is a potential hot spot, but there is still some movement there at the cornerback spot opposite Jamari Harris. TJ Hall, top of the top line of the depth chart this week. Nestor was going into camp. What's your feel here? Were they going to play multiple guys here? That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
I think that's fair. I think that's right. I think that's what they're going to do is put, TJ Hall's the number one, and he deserved it. He won the job, and I think that's really fair. And I think that's really cool too, because you're looking at a guy 2 years ago he played all special teams. Then he gets thrown in against the fastest receiver in the Big Ten after Cooper DeJean gets knocked out, and he gets burned really bad. but he fought his way back. Last year he was injured. Now he's in this position. He's able to beat out Deshaun Lee, who started 6 games. He's able to beat out, Nestor, who I think was, everybody kind of penciled in as
Well, he came in. It seemed like he came into camp with some of the loudest momentum of anybody on the team, John Nestor.
Exactly. So good on TJ Hall for pulling that out, for being more consistent. However, you're going to need another defensive back. We know that something's going to happen. It always does. And so it behooves them that maybe, first 2 series, you go with TJ Hall, or maybe all the way through the first quarter. And then maybe second quarter, it's Nestor's time. And then maybe you throw Lee in there too,
Yeah. You're going to need all 4 corners. Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind throughout this season.
And Nestor's your backup cash.
Yeah, that's interesting too. A little foreshadowing there, I think.
Yeah, right. And in a game like this, Rob, what Iowa wants desperately is get a big enough lead in the third quarter, late third quarter, that you could start shuffling in guys, getting them some on-field reps. And the thing I like about the defensive backfield now is that, yes, it's incredibly experienced, but then there's also some depth being built. So next year, when Castro's in the NFL, and Jamari Harris is probably in the NFL, and maybe Wampa is too, and Quinn Schulte's in dental school, or maybe the NFL, that it's not like, oh my God, what do we got? Well, TJ Hall, John Nestor, Deshaun Lee, they're all experienced. Cohen Entringer played a lot of special teams. He's ready to go. Zach Lutmer played a lot of special teams. He's ready to go. It's not as big of a drop off as we think. That's what your goal is. And I like the fact there's competition there, because you shouldn't feel like you've won the job. You should keep competing for the job.
Yes, no doubt. It should go all the time. And I'm looking at the 84 degrees on Saturday, Scott. Looks like 84, dew points low, so not too much humidity. But even in that situation, when it's that warm, you're going to have to rotate on the defensive line. Even more early in the season, maybe, than you do later in the season. And that, obviously, that interior we've talked about a lot, but also the pass rush. So this is a good test for that group. As we talked about, Rubley's got some talent, and they're going to need to get a little bit of pressure on him, most likely. So it's a good, this looks like it'll be a good opportunity for us to get a look at what they have here. That, we saw it on Kids Day, we saw it during spring practice, but it's a little different when you're at 70,000 in Kinnick and the other team isn't letting you know what it's doing.
Yeah. That's been, if there is a concern I have with the defense, and it's small. I mean, but
we're picking nits on this side of the ball.
It's depth along the defensive line. And part of it is the lack of experience. I mean, Max Llewellyn played some last year. He was okay, but he still only played a limited amount. And then you look at, Brian Allen. We've seen him play really well in scrimmages, but that's not the real game. Jeremiah Pittman has kind of been a guy, fill in. Well, now he's got to take a little bit bigger role. Even Aaron Graves has to take a bigger role, than he's had in the past. And then
Deontay Craig needs to be better than he was last year. Exactly. They all do.
Yep, they all need to be better. You're right. I mean, there's no Logan Lee anymore.
Right.
There's no Joe Evans, who had 28 career sacks.
Yep.
So you've got to be better there. And then you look at Will Hubert and Luke Gaffney,
Jeff Bowie.
Yeah, I guess he's hurt. So
is he hurt again? That sucks.
Yeah. Does a Kenny Merriweather, or somebody like that, do they get in? And because if there's one concern for the defense, and this is, to me, is beyond just a little nitpick, and that is they need to get after the quarterback a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think, last year Joe was great in that last game, but they struggled getting after the QB at times last year. And now, we also talk about the turnovers. They were -7 last year as a team. Part of it was because the offense didn't take care of the ball, but the other part is the offense didn't have the ball enough to where the other team, they played Iowa football for most of the season. They just said, we're not going to go after this team. We know what they're capable of doing. We don't need to. Let's just play punt ball. And, not
even Michigan in the Big Ten championship, the quick passes. Yeah. All right, you're going to play soft coverage. We're just going to freaking kill you underneath.
Yeah.
And, when you're giving things up like that, you need to find ways to counter because there's so many different offenses, and passing games have become so advanced now. If you give a quarterback enough time, he's going to pick you apart.
Yeah, and 130 different schools did that.
Yeah.
The one we covered didn't. But I think it's everybody does that differently. But I think that the onus goes onto the offense on that. Sustain drives, get ahead, force them to make mistakes. Because like we saw at Iowa State last year, it's 10-0. Iowa State starts to feel some pressure at home. They throw to the flat, pick six.
Yep.
For Sebastian Castro. But you look throughout the season, Northwestern is playing safe, and everybody's playing safe against Iowa because they're just like, there's no use into doing this because their defense is too good and their offense is so bad. We're going to get the ball back anyway. So let's just not worry about it. If the
play the odds, they're really just playing the odds.
Exactly. Just play them. Illinois did the same thing. I mean, they were very aggressive in a lot of games. They were not against Iowa because they knew what they were facing. Now, if the offensive line, if they can run the ball for 4.5 to 5 yards a carry, and if they can get a lead and teams are like, well, we're going to have to go downfield now. That's when we saw in the past where Iowa was unreal, like against Maryland a few years ago. They're trying to attack down the field, and that's where Iowa just, went southpaw on defense. And that's what they're capable of doing if they can establish the run and be efficient in the pass.
Yeah, no doubt. And as we've said for a while now, looking ahead to this Illinois State game as it, relates to this schedule, this is a game where if Iowa is who we think it can be, which is the potential to be a playoff team, this game on Saturday shouldn't be close in the second half. I could see some feeling out in the first half, but you would think in this type of a game, Iowa could physically, especially with an offensive line with 151 starts, you got to be able to run the ball. And maybe Illinois State just jams the box, which I'm sure it probably will until Iowa proves it can throw the ball. Just work off of that. Just build off of that and try to take advantage of what Illinois State is doing and show that your offense has the capability to do that. And to me, that will make me feel better, Scott, moving forward into the Iowa State game. If I see some rhythm on the offense, I don't even need to see, I don't need to see 45 points. I just need to see some consistency, the ability to move the ball, flip the field, stop the 3 and outs, stop turning the ball over in the backfield, getting the ball like Deacon did last year, protect the football, make the makeables. We've talked about it all off season. It's more complicated than maybe some people think it is, but it's what you're tasked with in playing football is make the makeables, complementary football. Offense doesn't have to be great. It needs to complement the other phases. And if the other phases may have an off day or make a mistake, can your offense make up for that? It couldn't last year. No. Can it this year?
To me, perfect numbers for Saturday, Rob, would be something like if Cade McNamara is like 15 to 22 with no interceptions. If
even with one touchdown, I'm fine with. He doesn't have to throw 5 touchdowns.
No, because your running backs will take care of that.
Yeah.
If Brendan Sullivan comes in the fourth quarter, if he's 3 of 4.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine too. And then if you run the ball 55 times, get over 210 yards, and lean on it and then have some explosive plays. I mean, that's one thing Lester really wants is some explosive plays out of his offense. So
what's that?
I know I haven't seen that.
What's an explosive play?
Especially in the pass game.
I know. Hey, could you do us a favor, Tim, and throw the ball like when you're in the red zone? Maybe throw some passes into the end zone.
I know, not shy of the goal line. God, I kept that stat going, and I watched every single play multiple times. It was gross, but
the object is to get over the wider line. That wide line in the front of the end zone. You got to get over that. That's how you score.
You don't need Luke to shut down the force field. You can get into that area. And
was it the game at Illinois where it's just, could you please throw the ball in the end zone?
Yes. And you know, the sad part was like Sam Laporta was the best player on the field.
Yeah,
And he was great. They could not do anything with him. And yet they oh man, there were a couple of series there where it was just like, you know, when they took over at like the 5-yard line after that fumble,
right. Yeah.
and you know, Riley Moss forces a fumble and they recover, and then it's like, and then barely make a field goal, and it's like, God, what are you doing? You know, and then 10 straight times they missed 2-point conversions for from like 2016 to 21 or something like that. So
These are the stories you tell your grandchildren, folks. The stories of the early 2020s Iowa offense and what went wrong.
These are the
There's
stories.
a 30 for 30 there.
Yeah. Well, you better be careful when the lights are out, because you're going to keep them up at night.
Oh, all right, Scott. We ran this about an hour, and I know
Yeah.
you got to get on the road, and I've got to get some stuff done. And like we said, no need to dive deep into Illinois State. Just know that if Iowa is going to be the team that we think it can be, this is a game that it should win handily on Saturday.
Yeah.
And try to look at, instead of just the score, as we were saying, look and see if there's any rhythm on offense, if there's things that you like, make you feel good moving forward. That's really what we need, Scott. We need a Saturday from the offense that has us leaving Kinnick feeling like, okay, there's a chance that this could be something.
Yeah. You know, and the only downside of all that could be, Rob, is our page views will be down dramatically. If it's like 38-0, Rob, and the offense looks good and the defense shuts them out, and they, and we write glowing stuff about everything, you know what people are going to say? I watched the game. I
need something to complain about.
I know. So we'll have to be very creative in order to get people to read our stuff. But
yeah, it's always a challenge with the non-conference Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Traffic is usually a challenge, but
unless it's South Dakota State, nerd.
Right. I'm just looking forward to seeing football, man.
Yeah.
I've enough with the preseason talk. It's time for football, and I'm looking forward to everybody that's going out. Again, it's going to be a little warm out there. Make sure you hydrate in addition to whatever else you're drinking in the parking lots. Be safe, be kind to each other, enjoy the game. Try not to boo. I always mention that, but the picks, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that'll conclude our analysis and expert breakdown, as we like to call it, of Iowa football. And we did a little Minnesota football too. Yeah. But for those that are friends of the pod, you know that Scott, this is like traditional Scott kicks my ass in picking college games every year. So we're going to commence the ass beating again today for another season. Right. And you know what? Again, we talked about before we started recording how busy both he and I are, Scott and I are this week. And I haven't even had a chance to look at the lines, man. So I'm going off the top of my head here.
All right. Well,
I don't even know the Iowa line.
It's 22.5. So,
okay.
Yeah. Iowa State actually is 28.5 against North Dakota. So that's an interesting one. Just, we won't pick that, but
the worst of the Dakotas.
Yeah. North Dakota. Yeah.
Unfortunately, somebody has to be last when it comes to the North and South Dakotas and South Dakota states, and they have fallen to fourth.
Yeah, and they're pretty good. They still make the playoffs, but they're not national championship good like the others.
No, they're not South Dakota State, North Dakota State.
Yeah, at least they have hockey, I suppose.
Yes.
All right, tonight we have 3 games. Let's start with Howard Cunningham at Rutgers. Rutgers minus 34.5. This one spells to me to be in the 41-7 range. I'm going to take Howard because I think that it's going to be one of those 41-10, 41-7 games and not 44-0.
Not enough people named Howard anymore. They should bring that name needs a comeback.
Yes.
Because it's versatile too. Howie. Howard Cosell. Howard Schnellenberger.
Yes.
Some good Howards. I will take Howard as well. I'm not sure Rutgers offense can score 35 points.
They can run for it. Kyle
Yeah.
Monangai is terrific, but
Yeah.
Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the former Gopher quarterback, is their starter. We'll see.
Yeah.
Game of the night, to me, well, not counting Dion, but North Carolina -1.5 at the mighty Gophers. I'm going to be there. I am going to take Minnesota. I think Minnesota can win at home. It's supposed to rain, so I'm thrilled about that. But yeah, I'm going to take the Gophers.
I am too. I think the wrong team is favored there. It makes me kind of raise an eyebrow that North Carolina. It makes me think that the odds makers know something there, but I'm going to go with the home team here.
Yeah.
Being an home underdog opening night, I'll stick with them.
Yeah. They, how they like to run the football, and if they're in a little bit of a rough situation at home, they can lean on that.
And if the weather's a little dicey, that lends itself to Minnesota's style, I think,
Yeah.
of pounding the football.
Right. And they're not used to that, I'd say. Eastern Illinois at Illinois, -27.5 for the Illini. I'm going to still take the Illini over my hated Panthers, the rivals of now conference rivals again with the mighty Leathernecks. So I'm going to take ILLINI.
Who the hell's playing quarterback for Illinois this year?
It's Luke Altmaier, isn't it?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
They have a revolving door, it seems like, there with quarterbacks since Bielema has taken over. But give me Eastern.
Ooh. Just liking you already, Rob. I can't say anything. My team didn't even win a game last year.
I'm just thinking in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I still have the Big Ten West division in my head and how bad the offenses were last year. And I'm thinking to myself, Illinois, 27 points.
Yeah.
That's my logic there.
Of course, didn't they have like a shootout? It was like 48-45 with Indiana.
Yeah, they had some big ones, and then they had some where they couldn't get out of their own way.
Iowa, but
yeah.
But then talking to people with Illinois, they're like, that's as good of a defense as we've ever seen. It's like, this is a different animal down there compared to Indiana. But Friday night, we've got two games. This one actually should be very competitive, I think. And Florida Atlantic at Michigan State. The Spartans are 13.5-point favorites. I'm going to go with Florida Atlantic. I think outright, I would definitely take Michigan State, but I think this could be like 30-17, that type of thing. So I'm going to go with FAU.
If it was 14 or above, I may go that way, but with the 13 and needing the 2 touchdowns to cover, I think I'm going to go with Michigan State getting the 2 touchdown win.
All righty. Next up, this is the close one. Western Michigan at Wisconsin. The Badgers are 23.5-point favorites, and I'm going to take the Badgers to cover. I think this is one of those classic Wisconsin seal clubbings.
Yeah, I don't know much about Western, but I know it's fallen off a little bit recently, so I will take the Badgers as well.
Yeah, I think they've fallen off since they fired their coach dumbly in a couple years ago.
Where'd he go?
Yeah, we'll see him Saturday. He'll be pounding on the replay official's door like the last time somebody was up in the press box. Saturday, big noon game, big noon kickoff. Penn State at West Virginia. Penn State is an 8.5-point favorite at West Virginia. This is a really good, interesting game. I mean, it's regional for those two teams, which is good. They used to play one another with regularity. And, West Virginia won 9 games last year and Penn State won 11. That said, I'm going to go with Penn State. I think it's going to be competitive, but I think that they're going to cover.
Yeah, that number seems low. I would think Penn State would be favored more than that, but I know it's tough to win in Morgantown. That is a tough stadium. Neyland Stadium is a tough place to play. I'm going to take the Mountaineers.
Okay. Yeah, it's a tough number. It really is.
I don't like that number at all.
Because the ones I worry about with this stuff is the backdoor covers. The 27 to 13,
23 points, 30, and you get it's somebody's favored by 28 and they win by 27.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, and this one it's say 27-13 minute to go. And now you can't call 3 straight timeouts.
Right.
The team's inside the 5. Yeah, you gotta let them play. But Indiana State at Purdue minus 33.5. I'm not high on Purdue this year, but I am high on them for Saturday, and I think they win decisively and even cover 33.5, which is a humongous number, but I still don't have a lot of faith in Indiana State.
No, I don't either. That's a giant number. I'm going to take Indiana State. That's just a lot of points. I'm just going to hope that they can keep it close.
All right. I'll skip the game we covered for last. UConn at Maryland. Maryland minus 20.5. I don't like that number for Maryland. I think that's a bad number. I'm going to go with UConn on this one.
What's the number again? I'm sorry.
20.5.
And that's at
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah.
I don't know much about UConn.
They're independent. They might be in the Big 12 eventually.
Yeah, I saw that. You got some people that are against that, though. At least 2 schools I saw that don't like them.
I agree with them.
Give me UConn.
Okay. I don't think they're very good, but I don't know that Maryland's.
No, I don't trust Maryland.
Yeah, they have a new quarterback and everything.
And they have a new offensive analyst there.
Yeah, he might help them if they let him. Not call plays. FIU at Indiana. Indiana is minus 21.5.
Geez, these numbers, man.
I know. I'm going to go with the IU. Kirk Cignetti has been very brash, more brash than just about any coach I can remember coming in. And I'm like, you know where you're coaching, but still, FIU going to Indiana. I could see they're the type of team, and he's the type of coach that it's like they're not going to shut it down in the fourth quarter. They're going to ramp it up, and so I think they cover on 21.5.
I agree with that logic, and I'll take the Hoosiers as well.
Okay. Akron at Ohio State, 48.5, Rob.
I'll take Akron. There's no way I'm throwing 48 points. I don't care who it is.
All right. I'm going to go with Ohio State because I will throw the 48.5.
That's one of those games where you're watching, okay, it's 24-3. All right, it's 21. Then I got to get, then you start in your head and doing the math to how do you get to 48 to make sure you cover it. Is it 48.5?
Yeah, 48.5.
Good.
So Ohio State, watch them miss the extra point. They win 48-0, 55-7 or something.
I think Ryan Day will take it easy on the fellow smaller Ohio University in Akron and cut it off at like 47.
All right. The fighting LeBron Jameses, because he's been donating all that money there. Next up, this one is going to be a challenge. Miami of Ohio at Northwestern, minus 2.5 for the Wildcats. I'm going to go with Miami of Ohio. I think they win outright.
Chuck Martin. I like Chuck Martin.
Yeah, Chuck
Good
Martin.
Coach.
So I wonder what George Barnett will think here. But
I will take the Cats.
Okay.
Give me the Cats. Wow. Even though they lost 2 offensive players to the Hawkeyes.
Yeah. I know. They can be impact players too. All right. UTEP at Nebraska. And Nebraska is 27.5. I'm going to take Nebraska. I think this is going to be the beginning of something very special for at least a week in Lincoln. We'll definitely hear about it.
Nebraska and Matt Rule strike me as the type to run it up the other UTEP's ass.
Yeah.
And just kill them. So yeah, give me the Huskers here.
All right. Now we get to the night games. Idaho at Oregon, 44.5. And I'm still going with the Mighty Ducks.
I'll split the difference here. I took the points with Akron. I'm going to throw the points with Oregon.
Okay. Yeah, I think both of them, they might be a combination of 100 points between them and them winning these games. Fresno State at Michigan on NBC, minus 20.5 for the Wolverines. You know what? This I can see the scenarios playing out both ways, which is what's
Yep.
making this frustrating as heck. I'm going to go with Fresno State. I think Michigan wins, but I'm going to go Fresno State and give me the 20 and a half.
I agree. I'm going to go with Fresno as well. I think it's a pretty good program, one that doesn't get a lot of recognition because it's not in a power conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I will take them. And I think Michigan definitely falls off from where it's been. I don't think that's breaking news.
Yeah, really.
And they'll still be really good, but
Right.
just not as dominant.
Okay, in Hawaii, we got UCLA at Hawaii. UCLA giving up 14 and a half. Not a big believer in UCLA this year, but I think at Hawaii that they get it done and they win by more than 14 and a half. So I'll take the Bruins.
Give me the Rainbows. I'll take because I like that hook.
Okay. Hawaii. All right. The late Big Ten after dark. Weber State at Washington, minus 26 and a half for Washington. And with that, I give me Weber State. I will take Weber.
I will too.
Okay. And one more for the weekend, Rob, on Sunday. Probably the best game of the bunch. USC versus LSU in Las Vegas. The LSU is 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to take LSU.
Give me the Tigers.
All right. So
I know they play defense.
yeah, they do. USC, I'm not so sure about.
All right.
We'll see. But anyway, this segment's going to get a lot longer this year, huh?
We didn't do the Iowa game.
Oh, you're damn right. Illinois State and Iowa.
It's week one, folks. Give us a break.
Yeah. Illinois State at Iowa, minus 22 and a half for the Hawkeyes. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes. I think they win. I'm indecisive.
I haven't done my preview yet. Usually I have it in my head because I've already picked the game, but give me the Hawkeyes too. I'm going to ride some hope into Saturday. That's all I got really is hope.
Hope and change, huh? As we all do. All right. Now we're done. 18.
All right. Now we're done. We got all the games in. That's a lot of Big Ten teams now. For this, as Scott said, this segment's going to get longer. We'll have to give it a little bit more time.
The first half of the season, it's going to be like a 25-minute segment, So, but yeah, we got it done, and then I'll add them all up, tally them all up on Labor Day, huh?
I'll ruin the suspense. I ain't winning.
You might this year. I don't know.
All right, folks. We got the picks in. We got our pregame talk in. It's football season. Finally, we're looking forward to it. Saturday, 11 o'clock, Kinnick Stadium. Illinois State comes to town for the season opener for both schools. Hawkeyes, 22 and a half, you said?
22 and a half.
22 and a half point favorite for your betting needs. Enjoy the game. Again, have a good time. It's, as we like to say this time of year, it's a social event, Iowa football. Hang out with your friends, your family, have a good time, enjoy it, enjoy the game, all that stuff. Get to wave to the kids again. It's all back. Fun times again for everybody in Hawkeye Nation, and enjoy it. And Scott, safe travels up to Minnesota. And we'll see you on Saturday. And everybody else, have a good rest of your week. Have a great Labor Day weekend. And we will talk to you next week.